My name is Brooke Landon, and I'm about to tell you how one email turned my entire world upside down and took a $1 billion company down with it. 4 years ago, I walked into Atlas Core Logistics with stars in my eyes and 2 master's degrees burning a hole in my resume. Supply chain, management, and data analytics from Northwestern, not exactly weekend reading. But I'd always been the kind of person who saw patterns where others saw chaos. Growing up in small-town Minnesota with a librarian father and a computer science teacher mother, I learned early that problems were just puzzles waiting to be solved. Atlas Core seemed like the perfect place to solve the biggest puzzles of all. This wasn't some scrappy startup. They were moving freight for half the Fortune 500, orchestrating the invisible ballet that keeps America's shelves stocked. Their Chicago headquarters gleamed with glass and steel, and their reputation sparkled even brighter. I believed, with the naive confidence of someone who'd never been burned, that results would speak for themselves. I was wrong. The first red flag should have been my interview with Mitchell Reeves, the operations director who would become my direct supervisor. He spent more time looking at his phone than at my portfolio, nodding absently as I walked through the inventory optimization system I'd designed for my thesis project. When I finished, he looked up with the kind of smile that never reaches the eyes. "That's nice, Brooke. Really nice. But theory and practice are two different animals, you know. We'll start you off slow. Let you learn how things really work around here." I nodded eagerly, interpreting his condescension as wisdom. I had so much to learn. The learning curve was steep, but I threw myself into it with characteristic intensity. Atlas Core's systems were impressive but antiquated, a patchwork of legacy software held together with digital duct tape and institutional inertia. Within my first month, I'd identified 17 critical inefficiencies in their warehouse management protocols. By month 3, I'd drafted a comprehensive overhaul that could reduce carrying costs by 35%. Mitchell's response was to assign me to help with routine optimization projects, essentially data entry dressed up with a fancy title. But I kept working on my system during lunch breaks and evenings, refining algorithms and stress testing scenarios. The math was beautiful, elegant in its simplicity. More importantly, it worked. The breakthrough came during my 6th month, when a major client, Meridian Consumer Goods, threatened to pull their contract due to chronic delays in their Southeast distribution network. I'd been analyzing their shipping patterns for weeks, and I knew exactly what was wrong. Their current routing system was optimized for fuel efficiency, not time-sensitive delivery windows. A simple algorithmic adjustment could cut their delivery times by 22% while actually reducing transportation costs. I compiled my findings into a presentation and requested a meeting with Mitchell. He kept me waiting for 45 minutes, then gave me exactly 7 minutes to make my case. I spoke quickly, highlighting the key metrics and showing him the projected savings. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and smiled that empty smile again. "Interesting thoughts, Brooke. Really interesting. Let me run this up the chain and see what the big brains think." 3 weeks later, I watched from the back of the conference room as Mitchell presented my solution to the Meridian executives. Every slide, every calculation, every innovation presented as his own work. The clients were impressed. The senior leadership was impressed. Mitchell received a commendation for exceptional strategic thinking and a $15,000 bonus. My name appeared nowhere in the official documentation. When I approached Mitchell afterwards, he looked genuinely confused by my distress. "You did the analysis, sure, but I developed the client relationship. I structured the presentation. I took the risk. That's leadership. Brooke, you'll understand when you've been here longer." I wanted to scream. Instead, I smiled and said I understood. Because what choice did I have? I was still junior staff, still learning the ropes, still believing that if I just worked harder and smarter, justice would eventually prevail. The pattern repeated itself with depressing regularity. My route optimization algorithms became Mitchell's innovative logistics solutions. My predictive modeling for demand forecasting became his data-driven approach to inventory management. My risk assessment protocols became his proactive supply chain security measures. Each time, I told myself it was temporary. Each time, I convinced myself that building a reputation took time. Each time, I buried my resentment a little deeper and focused on the work itself. The work was genuinely rewarding. Over the next 3 years, I developed systems that revolutionized how Atlas Core operated. My inventory management protocols reduced waste by 40%. My shipping route optimization saved the company millions in fuel costs. My supplier risk assessment models prevented 3 major disruptions that could have cost tens of millions more. But according to the official record, I was just another analyst running reports and updating spreadsheets. The innovations belonged to Mitchell, or to the mysterious, cross-functional team that somehow never included my name in the credits. I found allies among the other overlooked employees. Derek Sloan, a brilliant product engineer whose user interface designs had transformed Atlas Core's client portal, only to watch his supervisor claim credit for the intuitive user experience. Mason Clark, whose client success strategies had increased retention rates by 30%, was consistently passed over for promotion while less capable colleagues advanced based on his work. Harper Bell, a data scientist whose machine learning models had optimized freight pricing across 6 market segments, had been restructured out of her position just months before the company announced record profits from their innovative pricing strategies. We'd commiserate over coffee, sharing war stories and frustrations. But ultimately, we all made the same choice: keep our heads down, do excellent work, and hope that eventually merit would triumph over politics. Then came the announcement that changed everything. It was a Tuesday morning in March when Mitchell called an all-hands meeting for the operations team. He looked particularly pleased with himself, which immediately put me on edge. When the entire staff had assembled in the main conference room, he gestured to the young woman standing beside him. "I want you all to meet Callie Rowe, our new strategy development associate. Callie just graduated from Wharton with an MBA in operations management, and she's going to be working on some exciting new initiatives." Callie looked like she'd stepped out of a business school brochure: perfectly styled blonde hair, designer suit, confident smile. She was probably 25, maybe 26, with the kind of polish that comes from never having to worry about making ends meet. "I'm thrilled to be here," she said, her voice carrying the slight trace of an East Coast accent. "I've been studying Atlas Core's operations for months, and I'm excited to bring some fresh perspectives to the team." Something about her phrasing bothered me, but I couldn't quite put my finger on what. After the meeting, I did some discreet research. Callie Rowe's LinkedIn profile was impressive: Wharton MBA, summer internship at McKinsey, undergraduate degree from Princeton. But there was something else, buried in the About section, that made my blood run cold. Proud granddaughter of Atlas Core CEO Henry Dayton. Nepotism wasn't unusual in corporate America, but something about this felt different. The way Mitchell had introduced her, the emphasis on exciting new initiatives, the timing, it all felt orchestrated. My suspicions were confirmed 2 weeks later when Mitchell announced that Callie would be leading the team preparing for Atlas Core's annual Innovation Gala. The gala was the company's biggest event of the year, where they showcased their latest developments to clients, investors, and industry leaders. The highlight was always the presentation of the Titan of Innovation Award, given to the employee whose work had most significantly advanced the company's capabilities. "We want to make sure this year's presentation really showcases our cutting-edge thinking," Mitchell explained. "Callie's going to coordinate with all departments to identify our most innovative projects and develop a comprehensive presentation strategy." I raised my hand. "What about the supply chain resilience framework I've been developing? The one that integrates predictive analytics with real-time disruption monitoring?" Mitchell's expression barely changed, but I caught the slight tightening around his eyes. "That's still in development, isn't it? We want to focus on completed projects with measurable results." "It is completed," I said, keeping my voice level. "I've been beta testing it with 3 client accounts for the past 6 months. The results show a 60% improvement in disruption response times and a 28% reduction in associated costs." "Interesting," Callie interjected, pulling out her tablet. Could you send me the documentation? I'd love to review it as part of our assessment process. Something in her tone made me hesitate, but I nodded. Of course, I'll get you the full technical specifications and the performance data. I should have trusted my instincts. I should have kept my mouth shut and my work protected. Instead, I spent the next 2 weeks compiling everything. 6 months of research, development, testing, and refinement. Hundreds of pages of documentation, flowcharts, algorithmic proofs, and real-world performance metrics. It was the most comprehensive project I'd ever undertaken, and I was proud of every equation. I sent it to Callie on a Friday afternoon, along with a note offering to present it myself at the gala. She responded within an hour, thanking me for the valuable input and promising to incorporate these insights into our strategic presentation. The following Monday, I received a calendar invitation for a strategy development session scheduled for later that week. The meeting was mandatory for all operations staff, and the agenda simply read, Innovation Showcase Preview. The meeting was held in the executive conference room, the one with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago skyline. The entire operations team was there, plus several senior managers I recognized but had never spoken to. Mitchell sat at the head of the table, looking pleased with himself. Callie stood at the presentation screen, laptop open, looking confident and prepared. Before we dive into the gala presentation, Mitchell began, I want to give you all a preview of the innovative work that's going to represent Atlas Core this year. Callie has been leading a fascinating project that perfectly encapsulates our commitment to next-generation logistics solutions. My stomach dropped. Callie clicked to the first slide, and I felt like I was looking at a funhouse mirror version of my own work. The framework was there. All of it. The predictive analytics integration, the real-time monitoring protocols, the disruption response algorithms. Even the performance metrics were identical, down to the decimal points. But my name appeared nowhere in the presentation. The challenge, Callie was saying, was developing a system that could seamlessly integrate multiple data streams while maintaining real-time processing capabilities. The breakthrough came when I realized that traditional approaches were too rigid to handle the dynamic nature of modern supply chains. She was describing my breakthrough. The moment, 3 months ago, when I'd been debugging the integration protocols and suddenly understood how to make the system truly adaptive. I'd worked until 4 a.m. that night, running test after test until I was certain the solution was viable. The results have been remarkable, Callie continued, clicking to the performance data slide. Beta testing with 3 major clients has shown a 60% improvement in disruption response times and a 28% reduction in associated costs. We're calling it the Adaptive Resilience Framework. I felt like I was drowning. Every word she spoke was mine. Every concept she explained was something I'd developed through months of painstaking work. But she delivered it with such confidence, such ownership, that I began to doubt my own memory. Questions? Mitchell asked when she finished. I raised my hand, my voice barely steady. The technical documentation mentions beta testing with 3 clients. Could you elaborate on which clients and what specific metrics were measured? Callie's smile never wavered. The testing was conducted with Meridian Consumer Goods, Pinnacle Manufacturing, and Cascade Retail Group. The metrics focused on response latency, cost impact, and operational continuity scores. Those were my beta clients. My metrics. My 6 months of careful testing and refinement. Impressive work, said Janet Morrison, the Senior Vice President of Operations. This is exactly the kind of innovative thinking that sets Atlas Core apart. The rest of the meeting passed in a blur. People congratulated Callie on her exceptional work. Mitchell beamed like a proud father. I sat in my chair, numb, watching my professional life crumble in real time. After the meeting, I approached Mitchell privately. We need to talk about the presentation. He looked at me with genuine confusion. What about it? Callie did excellent work. That's my work, Mitchell. Every algorithm, every protocol, every piece of that framework, I developed it. Callie just repackaged it. His expression shifted to something between annoyance and pity. Brooke, I understand you're feeling territorial, but collaboration is part of working in a team environment. Callie took your input and developed it into something presentation ready. That's valuable work. Input. I struggled to keep my voice down. I sent her 6 months of research and development. Complete technical specifications. This isn't collaboration, this is theft. That's a serious accusation, Mitchell said, his voice cooling. I suggest you be very careful about how you proceed here. Callie is family to this company. Henry Dayton specifically requested that she be given opportunities to shine. Making unfounded accusations could be viewed as insubordination. The threat was clear. I was expendable. She was not. I spent the rest of the day in a haze, mechanically completing routine tasks while my mind raced through options. I could go to HR, but Mitchell had made it clear that would be career suicide. I could try to present my case to senior leadership, but who would believe me over the CEO's granddaughter? I could look for another job, but that would mean abandoning 4 years of work and starting over somewhere else. By evening, I'd reached a decision. I would attend the Innovation Gala and find a way to set the record straight. I had backup documentation, email timestamps, client testimonials, enough evidence to prove the work was mine. It would be uncomfortable, potentially explosive, but it was better than letting them steal my career. The gala was held at the Palmer House Hilton, in the same ballroom where Atlas Corp had celebrated their 20th anniversary 5 years earlier. The company had spared no expense: crystal chandeliers, elaborate floral arrangements, a full orchestra playing background music. The guest list included not just Atlas Corp employees, but major clients, industry leaders, and financial analysts. This was about more than employee recognition. It was about showcasing the company's continued innovation to the people who mattered most. I arrived early, wearing the one formal dress I owned that didn't scream retail clearance rack. The ballroom was already buzzing with conversation. Groups of executives clustered around cocktail tables, discussing market trends and quarterly projections. I spotted Callie near the bar, surrounded by admirers, holding court like a young queen. The presentation was scheduled for 8 o'clock, during the main course. I planned to wait until the Q&A session, then present my evidence in the most professional way possible. I'd brought copies of my original documentation, email chains showing the development timeline, and testimonials from the beta clients confirming my direct involvement. At 7:30, I approached the registration table to check in. The volunteer, a young woman from the marketing department, scanned the list and frowned. "I'm sorry, I don't see your name here." "There must be a mistake," I said, pulling out my phone to show her the invitation email. "I RSVP'd last week." She checked again, then called over her supervisor. After a brief consultation, the supervisor approached me with an apologetic smile. "I'm sorry, Ms. Landon, but it appears there was an error in our invitation process. This event is for senior staff and key clients only. I'm afraid we don't have seating available for analyst-level employees." The words hit me like a physical blow. Around me, the elegant crowd continued their conversations, oblivious to my humiliation. Through the ballroom doors, I could see Callie at the head table, chatting with Henry Dayton and other executives. "There has to be some mistake," I said, my voice barely steady. "I've been working on the presentation that's being showcased tonight. I need to be here." "I understand your enthusiasm," the supervisor said, "but the guest list is final. Perhaps you could watch the live stream from the office." I stood there for a moment, clutching my folder of evidence, watching through the glass doors as the people who'd stolen my work prepared to celebrate their success. The injustice of it was overwhelming, not just the theft of my ideas, but the casual dismissal of my very existence. I could have left then. I could have gone home, updated my resume, and started looking for a new job. That's what they expected me to do. That's what I'd always done before: swallow my pride, accept the injustice, and hope things would be different somewhere else. Instead, I walked to the hotel lobby, found a quiet corner, and opened my laptop. The plan had been forming in my mind all week, but I'd kept pushing it away as too extreme, too risky. Now, With my face burning from humiliation and my career in ruins anyway, it felt like the only option that made sense. I opened my email and began typing. The first message was to Derek Sloan, the product engineer who'd been pushed out 6 months earlier. I'd kept in touch with him since he'd left, and I knew he was struggling to find work that matched his talents. His termination had been dressed up as a restructuring, but everyone knew the real reason. His supervisor had wanted to claim credit for the client portal redesign. Derek, I wrote, I know we've talked about starting something new. I think it's time. Are you available to talk tonight? The second message was to Mason Clark, who'd been reorganized out of his position just 3 weeks earlier. His client retention strategies had been revolutionary, but his lack of political savvy had made him expendable when budget cuts were needed. The third was to Harper Bell, the data scientist whose machine learning models had transformed Atlas Core's pricing strategies, only to be laid off in the same restructuring that had eliminated Mason's position. Within an hour, I had responses from all three. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop near my apartment at 9 o'clock. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of planning and preparation. By the time I met with Derek, Mason, and Harper, I had a comprehensive proposal ready. We would start our own company, combining our complementary skills to create something better than what we'd left behind. The logistics industry is ripe for disruption, I explained, showing them the framework I'd been developing beyond the adaptive resilience system. What if we could create a platform that integrates everything: inventory management, route optimization, predictive analytics, client communication, financial modeling, into a single, seamless system? Derek leaned forward, his eyes lighting up. The user interface would be crucial. Something intuitive enough for warehouse managers but sophisticated enough for supply chain executives. And the client success component would be built in from the ground up, Mason added. Not an afterthought, but a core part of the architecture. Harper was already sketching algorithms on a napkin. The machine learning possibilities are enormous. We could create predictive models that don't just react to disruptions, they prevent them. We talked until nearly midnight, our excitement building with each new idea. By the time we parted ways, we had a name, Vector Nova Solutions, and a plan to incorporate within the week. But first, I had one more message to send. I spent the next day crafting the email that would change everything. It needed to be professional, factual, and utterly devastating. I included time-stamped documentation of every innovation that had been stolen, every contribution that had been ignored, every talented employee who'd been pushed out to make room for less capable but more politically connected replacements. The recipient list was carefully chosen: Henry Dayton, the CEO, the entire board of directors, the heads of all major departments, and 3 journalists who specialized in corporate accountability stories. At precisely 8:47 p.m., the exact time when Callie would be accepting the Titan of Innovation Award, I clicked send. The subject line read, "Regarding tonight's innovation showcase, a clarification of attribution." The body of the email was surgical in its precision. Dear Atlas Core leadership, I am writing to provide important context regarding the adaptive resilience framework being presented at tonight's Innovation Gala. While I'm sure the presentation was professionally delivered, I believe there may be some confusion regarding the origin and development of this work. Attached, you will find comprehensive documentation demonstrating that the framework was developed by me over a 6-month period, with beta testing conducted directly with Meridian Consumer Goods, Pinnacle Manufacturing, and Cascade Retail Group. The documentation includes time-stamped emails, technical specifications, algorithmic proofs, and client testimonials confirming my direct involvement in every aspect of the project. I am also providing documentation of other innovations that appear to have been misattributed over the past 4 years, including the inventory optimization protocols that reduced carrying costs by 35%, the routing algorithms that saved millions in transportation expenses, and the risk assessment models that prevented 3 major supply chain disruptions. Additionally, I want to bring to your attention a pattern of talent management that may be affecting Atlas Core's long-term competitiveness. Over the past year, The company has lost several highly skilled employees whose innovations were subsequently credited to other team members. I have included testimonials from these former employees documenting their experiences. As of tonight, I am resigning from my position at Atlas Corp, along with 3 other former employees who have decided to join me in founding Vector Nova Solutions. We will be offering the next generation of logistics technology to companies that value innovation, accuracy, and ethical business practices. I want to be clear that this decision is not motivated by personal grievance, but by professional principle. The logistics industry needs companies that can compete on merit, not politics. Our clients deserve solutions developed by the people who actually understand their challenges. Vector Nova Solutions will be announcing our launch tomorrow, along with our first 3 client partnerships. I believe you will find our approach to be superior to current industry standards in every measurable way. I wish Atlas Corp success in their future endeavors and hope that tonight's events will provide an opportunity for reflection on the true sources of innovation within the organization. Respectfully, Brooke Landon, founder and CEO, Vector Nova Solutions. I attach 47 pages of documentation, including email chains, technical specifications, client testimonials, and a comprehensive analysis of the talent drain that had been systematically weakening Atlas Corp's competitive position. Then I closed my laptop and went to bed. The next morning, my phone was ringing before I was fully awake. Mitchell's name appeared on the screen, but I let it go to voicemail. The second call was from Janet Morrison, the Senior VP of Operations. The third was from Henry Dayton himself. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I met Derek, Mason, and Harper at the small office space we'd rented in a converted warehouse on the outskirts of Chicago. It wasn't much to look at. Exposed brick walls, industrial lighting, mismatched furniture from a used office supply store, but it was ours. By noon, we had our first official client meeting. Meridian Consumer Goods had called within an hour of receiving our proposal, eager to explore alternatives to their current logistics provider. The timing was perfect. Their contract with Atlas Corp was up for renewal in 60 days, and they'd been increasingly frustrated with service delays and cost overruns. The adaptive resilience framework was impressive, their operations director told us during our video conference, but we understand there were some complications with the implementation. Can you walk us through your approach? I smiled, pulling up the technical documentation that was rightfully mine. I'd be happy to explain how the system actually works. The presentation went flawlessly. Without Mitchell's interference or Callie's plagiarism, I was able to demonstrate the full potential of the framework, including advanced features that had been stripped out of the Atlas Corp version. Meridian was impressed enough to offer us a preliminary contract on the spot. By the end of the week, we had signed agreements with 3 major clients, a $5 million investment from Catalyst Partners, and a waiting list of companies eager to explore our services. Atlas Corp's stock price had dropped 12% in the same period. The business press was having a field day with the story. Logistics giant faces brain drain as innovation team defects. Read the headline in Supply Chain Management today. Atlas Corp attribution scandal highlights industry-wide talent retention crisis, announced the Wall Street Journal. The most damaging coverage came from TechCrunch, which had obtained and published the full documentation I'd sent to Atlas Corp's leadership. The article, titled, "How Corporate Politics Killed a Billion-Dollar Company's Innovation Engine," provided a detailed timeline of the systematic theft of intellectual property and the deliberate marginalization of talented employees. The Atlas Corp case represents everything wrong with modern corporate culture. The article concluded, "When politics matter more than performance, when connections trump competence, companies don't just lose employees, they lose their future." Mitchell tried to reach me 17 times that week. I finally answered on the 18th call, more out of curiosity than courtesy. "Brooke, thank God," he said, his voice strained. "We need to talk. There's been a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding," I replied calmly. Everything was very clear. "Look, I know you're upset, and I understand why, but we can fix this. Henry wants to offer you a director position, full recognition for your work, equity participation. We can make this right. I almost laughed. You want to make it right? Here's how you make it right. You stop stealing people's work. You stop pushing out talented employees to make room for connected mediocrities. You stop treating your workforce like disposable resources. That's not fair, Mitchell protested. This is business. Sometimes difficult decisions have to be made. You're right, I said. It is business. And I've made my decision. I hung up and turned off my phone. The next few months were a whirlwind of 18-hour days, countless client meetings, and the exhilarating challenge of building something from nothing. Vector Nova's integrated platform was everything we'd dreamed it could be: elegant, powerful, and genuinely innovative. Our client retention rate was 100%, and our waiting list continued to grow. Atlas Core's problems, meanwhile, were mounting. The departure of key technical talent had exposed the weakness of their underlying systems. Without the innovations that had been driving their growth, they were struggling to compete with more agile competitors. 3 major clients had switched to other providers, and their stock price had lost nearly 30% of its value. The final blow came when the Securities and Exchange Commission announced an investigation into Atlas Core's disclosure practices, specifically regarding the attribution of technological innovations in their annual reports. The investigation had been triggered by our documentation, which suggested that the company had been systematically misrepresenting the sources of their competitive advantages. Henry Dayton resigned as CEO 6 months after the Innovation Gala. Mitchell was terminated 3 weeks later. Callie quietly left the company and enrolled in a graduate program in art history. As for me, I found myself standing on a stage very different from the one I'd been banned from that night in March. The International Supply Chain Innovation Conference had invited me to deliver the keynote address, and I was looking out at an audience of 3,000 industry professionals. The logistics industry stands at a crossroads, I began, my voice carrying clearly through the convention center. We can continue to operate under the old paradigms, hierarchical, political, resistant to change, or we can embrace a new model based on merit, innovation, and genuine respect for human talent. I paused, looking out at the sea of faces. In the third row, I spotted Derek, Mason, and Harper, all of them beaming with pride. In the back, I noticed several Atlas Core employees taking notes on their phones. 6 months ago, I was told I wasn't important enough to attend my own company's awards ceremony. They were right about one thing. I wasn't important to them, but that didn't mean I wasn't important, period. The audience was completely silent, hanging on every word. The future of our industry belongs to companies that understand a simple truth. Innovation comes from people, not politics. When you nurture talent, when you reward merit, when you treat your workforce as partners rather than resources, you don't just build better companies, you build better futures. I clicked to my final slide, which showed Vector Nova's growth trajectory over the past 6 months. The numbers were staggering: 340% revenue growth, 100% client retention, 47 new employees hired, and a valuation that had tripled since our launch. You can ban someone from your awards ceremony, I concluded, but you can't ban them from building something better. The question is, what kind of company do you want to be? The applause was thunderous, lasting nearly 5 minutes. As I left the stage, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: the satisfaction of work truly recognized, fairly attributed, and honestly earned. That evening, at the conference reception, I was approached by a young woman who looked remarkably like myself 4 years earlier, eager, ambitious, and slightly overwhelmed by the corporate environment. "Ms. Landon," she said, "I'm Jessica Park, a supply chain analyst at Meridian. I wanted to thank you for your presentation today. I've been struggling with some similar issues at my company, and your story gives me hope." I smiled, remembering my own early struggles. "What kind of issues?" "My supervisor has been taking credit for my work," she said quietly. "I developed a new forecasting model that saved the company millions. But when it was presented to senior leadership, my name wasn't mentioned. I don't know what to do." I thought for a moment, then pulled out my business card. "Send me your resume and some examples of your work. Vector Nova is always looking for talented people who understand the value of innovation Her eyes widened. Really? You'd consider hiring me? Jessica, I said, talent recognizes talent, and talent deserves to be rewarded, not stolen. 3 months later, Jessica Park became Vector Nova's newest senior analyst. Her forecasting model, properly attributed and fully implemented, became a cornerstone of our predictive analytics platform. The logistics industry is still full of companies like Atlas Corp, bureaucratic, political, and ultimately self-destructive. But it's also full of people like Jessica, Derek, Mason, and Harper. People who understand that the future belongs to those who can solve problems, not those who can claim credit for other people's solutions. Vector Nova isn't just a company, it's proof that merit can triumph over politics, that innovation can overcome inertia, and that sometimes the best revenge is simply building something better. They thought they were banning me from their awards ceremony. Instead, they were freeing me to create my own awards, my own ceremony, my own definition of success. And unlike their version, mine is built on a foundation that can't be stolen, can't be copied, and can't be destroyed by corporate politics. The simple truth that good work, honestly done, will always find a way to shine.